Hey, welcome to Bear Mountain today. We're going to do a quick walk around and show you some of the early spring stuff on the farm here. Some things haven't gone exactly to plan, other things are doing really pretty well. We've had kind of a mild winter this year. No real super cold snaps, a lot of warm days, some frosty nights, but as it goes, it's been unusually, I'd say, on the warmer, drier side than normal. And that's affected a few things. So let's go take a look and see what's been affected and what hasn't. All right, we're standing out here in our daffodil patch. You might have remembered a video we did about a month or so back where we were removing tarps from an area that had daffodils for spring. And as you can see, they all came back really pretty good. But it hasn't been exactly cold enough, and we're not getting the production that we normally get off of daffodils. In our area of Oregon, Western Oregon, daffodils are rather ubiquitous. They actually grow kind of wild out in some of the grass seed fields. And so normally we get a lot of blooms. We're ready to harvest some more here. Some of them we've just harvested a lot and let the rest go. Because the market for the daffodils themselves, at least here in the Western Oregon side of things, is pretty saturated. A lot of people have them in their yards, so they're kind of a grab and go kind of thing. Anyway, we just kind of wanted to show that the weeds have pretty much stayed under control. There really are no weeds in here of any consequence. And when these daffodils get finished, we're going to apply compost in here, and then we're going to plant our fall pumpkins.
Specialty pumpkins.
Specialty pumpkins. They're little ornamental pumpkins. It's a great area for it. Gets lots of sun and lots of room to spread in here too. So it should have no negative impact on the bulbs. So we'll just surface plant those guys. And if we need to, we'll maybe put some tarp down on some of the pathways here to just kind of kill off any residual grass that's growing. So overall, I'd say the tarping thing worked out pretty well. Okay, this area I would say is kind of a mixed. We're trying to get some of these hyacinths back up and get them back to size. These were ones that we raised in the crates last year for cuts, and so we decided to plant these late. They were planted in the first part of January, and that was probably a big mistake. They probably should have gone in earlier so they would have had more time to vernalize. You can see the whites are very short and the pinks are, but interesting, the blues are a little more robust. So we actually might just take some of these for the house, but in the future, these guys, they should be getting themselves rejuvenated and they'll be good for next year. But I guess for this year, you would say they were kind of a bust.
So we're going to leave them, correct?
We're going to leave these guys, yeah. And we'll plant some summer annuals in the bed. We do have Alstroemeria that'll come back on this end, and there's some naturalizing drumstick alliums. They're just kind of like the seed fell there from prior years, and they're just kind of going to do their thing. Now behind me are more daffodils. These boxes were tarped as well, just like we did in the front, and they're actually doing pretty well, and we're going to get a pretty good harvest out of these guys. Off to the side over here is, we thought these guys would do a lot better. These are anemones that we left specifically in the box. Now you can see that they're growing in pretty big clumps. And so these are going to be like late harvest, but they're not as healthy this year as they have been in the past. And I'm wondering again if it has to do with just in nature, it didn't get cold enough and wet enough this winter for them. But they're still coming along, so we'll see how they'll do.
But we might replant those.
Yeah, I think we probably will.
For next year.
And so this is kind of where it looks like for, some of these spring bulbs. And let's go down and take a look at some of the other things that we got going in the hoop houses where the Ranunculus are at, and also kind of take a look at how the peonies are coming along this year. Okay, behind me over here are the peony beds. We have 3 beds, and you may notice that one has a tarp on it, one's really rocking and rolling, and the one on the opposite side is just starting to sprout. This is the difference between early, mid, and late. The late guys haven't even broke dormancy yet. This is right around the 5th, 6th of March, and we'll be taking this tarp off next week and doing exactly what we did to these two beds over here, which is just go and chop down anything that may not got killed under the tarp that is a weed, and then we apply a mulch of rotted hay/straw over the top. We're treating these guys with K&F solutions this year. So one of the things we're going to be trying to do is using compost teas with indigenous microorganisms and plus foliar applications of the K&F solutions. Does that make a difference in terms of like disease suppression? Lots of times on the foliage in the later part of spring, we start getting some black spot on the foliage itself, and so what we're trying to do is just trying to make this more healthy. And the same idea is we have a real tough problem in this area. We need to knock down Canadian thistle. It is at times very bad and requires a lot of manual work to come back through and keep knocking it down. So we're testing out a theory saying here's, okay, if we put mulches on top and we start using more fungal-based indigenous microorganism teas, are we going to change the biology here that would be more favorable to an herbaceous peony and less favorable to, say, something as a thistle? We know from our own experiences with compost that we can knock down Canadian thistle and create an environment it doesn't like because we have eradicated it on other areas of the farm. So this is the technique we're going to be trying to do on established peony beds and see if it works. So far, it's definitely, we've gotten rid of all the winter weeds. It was very little work, actually, and we spent more time putting the mulch down than we probably did cleaning out any excess weeds. Any of the excess crop residue from last year, we're just putting it in the pathways, kind of acting as a straw, and just for weed suppression. So far these early guys are looking good, and we should have blooms by next month. No, just kidding. It'll be probably, well, the way this season's going, it could be mid-May, I think.
Mother's Day?
Well, probably not Mother's Day.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's kind of a stretch, but they're moving along earlier than normal. This is another thing that has kind of surprised us with our warmer winter, is the mums are actually moving ahead of the scented geraniums. The scented geraniums, we still keep a fabric cloth on the guys just to keep some warmth on them. Today is kind of cool. It's possibly going to freeze, so we're kind of keeping them covered for a bit, and then if we get into a real warm weather, we take the cover off. But the mums, on the other hand, we're trying to get them maximum light. These guys are really growing great. This one right here in the front is River City, and Apricot Alexis, I think, is a little further down. Well, you can see they're all sprouting to some degree or another. We're actually, I think, pretty close to being able to take cuttings right now for just kind of populating more plants. This is the second or third year, actually.
This will be
the third year on this bed. So these plants are pretty established and they're doing well. We've been treating these guys also too with K&F soil drench solutions, fermented seawater, things of that nature. So it may actually be in pretty good shape. And then we applied about a ½ inch of urban waste compost on the top just for mulching purposes. But these guys are all looking pretty good. Okay, this is what we call our crate house, and really what it is it's just a caterpillar tunnel where we have decided years ago when we used to raise lilies that we used anemones as an alternative crop. The lilies were on a program, so we were getting them delivered every on a unique set of calendar dates that we specified, and so we planted them in these crates. But
for summer,
but for the fall through the winter, we needed an alternative crop, and that's when we started raising anemones in crates. It's not that this is any better than raising in the ground. As a matter of fact, I think sometimes it has some challenges that you wouldn't have in the ground regarding fertility and keeping the moisture levels up and things of that nature. But this year, I'd say our harvest is kind of maybe a little too warm, and then sometimes at night it's been a little too cold. We've tried to keep fabric cloths on the worst cases when our temperatures drop down into the mid-20s or lower, which we've had very little of. But they're just now coming on. Well, I shouldn't say just now. We've actually been harvesting them for about a month. But they're starting to get more robust right now. This is going to be kind of their peak period between now and, say, the end of April. At that point, it's going to not matter how much we vent this tunnel all the way up. It'll get too warm in here, and these guys will shut down once our temperatures get into the 80s consistently in here. However, what you may notice is some things growing in here that look a little weird, like you think, oh, maybe this is a weed or something of that nature. We had a really bad infestation last year of aphids, and so we thought, well, what if we just planted some garlic in every crate? We put in like a bulb of garlic or two, just to see if there would be any kind of like allelopathic type thing that maybe it'd help keep the aphids away. And then the other thing that we've done is we backed off on any kind of high nitrogen fertilizer. It may be that we actually maybe need a little more nitrogen in here, but I think that was also a big thing. We used fish meal last year as a additive to the crates at planting time, and we got a lot of really good foliage on it, but unfortunately I think what it did is it created an imbalance in the plants, and that was very attractive to aphids, and we had a lot of losses last year related to that. So we backed off and didn't do that at all. And this year we're also applying K&F solutions to the plants, and actually we're getting really good stems. Denise, you harvested in here, what, yesterday?
Yes.
It's looking like in some cases we got more to go again.
Yep.
And so these guys are starting to rock and roll pretty good. Okay, this one is an experiment we were trying Muscari, and you may notice there's actually a few weeds in some of these crates. This one, I'd say, was definitely a failure to launch on our part. They're beautiful little things, and that's the problem, is they're really little.
They're short.
They're short. These things were supposed to be, what is it? You said
at least 6 to 8 inches.
6 to 8 inches, and I think if we barely made 4.
I don't think they're even 4.
Some of them are less than that. They're kind of cute, but
they're cute, but
kind of worthless.
So what's our plan with those?
I think we'll probably, when they go dormant, dig them out and then plant them early. We didn't plant them early enough this year. I think we need to plant these the same time we plant our anemones, which would be in October. That way they'll go through a colder cycle, and I think it'll juice them up a little more. So yeah, probably would have made a big difference to do it that way. Then what we've got down here, this is an experiment. We may have alluded to this before in a story about pansies, and these guys were just transplanted about 4 or 5 days ago, and it looks like they probably need some more fertilizing. They're getting a little yellow. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but we'll get these guys some fertilizer and see if we can get some production out of it. There's 25 in a crate, and we're gonna see how they do. This is, like I said, we haven't done them before. We got some blossoms firing off early.
1 inchers.
Some of them pretty cool colors.
Oh, they're really cool colors.
Yeah.
I think this is another case of it needs to be planted in October also.
Yeah, it may have been, maybe it's too late. I don't know. So we'll see what happens with these guys. So much for our experiments at this point.
Well, yeah, just keep trying.
Yep. Hey, this is the row of Ranunculus we talked about, and we really try to be religious about using the K&F solutions on it. And they actually are looking pretty good. I mean, these are unnetted, pretty strong stems. Almost some of them are ready to harvest, and this is the 6th of March, so we definitely are warmer because we usually don't start harvesting any ranunculus until near the end of the month of March. And as you can look down the row, you can see a lot of buds. So these are the amidines, which tend to be the floppiest, and then we've got labels and elegance series, Italian elegance series salmoni down there as well, and lots of buds. So naturally, of course, it's going to really freeze tomorrow night, so you know. So we're going to have to kind of up our hoop system a little bit and put some more fabric cloth over these guys. So far, no diseases. Don't see any aphids, and I think, you know, I got to say this row looks really successful. I think we really got a good soil balance going on in here, and it seems to be working pretty well. Okay, this tunnel is our newest one, and so it has not had as much soil treatment from a biologic standpoint as the tunnel we just showed you. This ranunculus right here is Labelle Picotee, white Picotee, and although we're getting, you know, a fair amount of buds, but you can tell that the plants are just not as robust. So we still got more work on the biology side. We got to get more IMO, indigenous microorganism, in here. Just continue to build up the structure of the soil. We definitely have enough organic material in here. The plants overall are healthy. Some of the lower leaves are turning a little on the yellow side, but the base plants are in pretty good shape.
I can see on one plant 3 or 4 blooms.
Yeah.
And last year when we had ranunculus in here, we had 1 bloom.
This tunnel last year on ranunculus was, I would say, total failure.
Yes.
We got some blooms off of it, but they were very short, and it was very few. And so
this is a step up.
This is a step up.
They've improved, but there's still more room to improve.
They got more to go, but I'm happy with the direction it's going. This looks pretty good. Okay, on the other side from the ranunculus, so I'll fall over here. These are our overwintered snapdragons, and they were pinched, and they're just getting ready to start to really grow. Now, what you may notice in here is there's a few weeds, but there's very few, and mostly I attribute that to we spent a lot of time, you know, again, trying to build the biology in here. We had a lot of weeds in this bed last year, and this year it's been hardly any. It
was a carpet of weeds.
Yep. And so we've really knocked down the broadleaf weeds and the grasses and things. There's a few, you know, that still sprout, and we come through and you can spend, you know, a minute and just pull it out. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, this is hugely different. This last year was work.
Right. So these guys here in the next couple of weeks are going to really start to stretch and grow, and we're going to have to, that's what these stakes here are for, is we're going to put hoops and then netting in so that we can give them support as they grow. Okay, these were stock plants we put in at right around the beginning of January. And we got different varieties in here. This front shorter variety is called Iron Series, so there's a variety of different colors of the Iron Series in here. They tend to be a shorter, stockier, but straight with no netting. And then in the very back, there's a little bit taller ones. We'll insert a picture, you can see it. That's the Caneto series, which are also tend to be straight with not need netting. So,
but they're taller.
Off to my right here, this was overwintered Guardian Series Delphinium, and most of it is coming back pretty good. This right here is, I think that's like a light powder blue color, and then the slower ones seem to be the white ones, which are in the center, and then we got more of the lavender and the blues in the back. Off to the far right is a last group of snapdragons that were pinched mostly, and they're having a little bit more of a struggle. That bed over on that side, I don't think the biology is quite as good as the one in the center. So
It's not our last snapdragon, it's our last indoors.
last inside the hoop houses.
Inside hoop house.
Yeah, we'll be planting outside after this.
Yeah, we have several more rounds.
So these guys in here will basically, this is going to be perennial for another year. Everything else in here will be rotating out probably by the end of May.
So, but eventually we will move those delphiniums somewhere else too, to give a chance to repair the bed also.
These kind of guys are only good for about 3 years, and then you start getting issues with they're too, just they get too tight. Some of them die out. Like I've got one right here that clearly died out, and you can see it just gave up the ghost. But you know, it leaves a little more room. We planted this pretty intensely, so it'll leave more room. The existing plants are going to put up more crowns, so probably all balances out to be about the same. So this is it. Okay. Just wanted to give you guys a walkthrough. This is pretty quick, and I want to thank you for coming along. And sometimes we get things that work out really well, they're on track. Sometimes things fire off early and aren't what we thought. Muscari is an example. And
You only learn if you try.
it's every year there's a challenge. So this was kind of like, you know, how things came out in the wintertime. And so far, I think we're doing pretty good.
Yep.
So thanks for coming along on this one, and we'll catch you on the next video. And I want you all to have a good day. Thanks for watching.
Bye.